My parents discovered my new salary before I even had the chance to celebrate it myself. One moment, I was staring at the promotion email with shaky disbelief, and the next they were hammering on my apartment door like collectors chasing overdue payment. I should have sensed something wrong from the stiff smiles, the bargain bin cake, and the fact that they didn't congratulate me once. They didn't ask how I felt or what this promotion meant to me. They only cared about one thing, the number on my paycheck. With boldness they never earned, they demanded half of it like it belonged to them. But they had no idea what was coming next. My name is Jessica Hale, and I've lived my life with a quiet, disciplined strength. It is the kind of strength you develop when you grow up realizing no one is coming to rescue you. I left home at 18 with 2 suitcases, a scholarship, and a vow that I would never owe them anything again. I worked late nights, studied on buses, and built my career piece by piece. Eventually, I became a senior financial analyst at a private Pittsburgh firm. People see me now and think I'm all polished confidence. They never see the years that shaped me. Those years were filled with guilt trips, emotional invoices, and constant reminders that I owed my parents for existing. When they showed up uninvited that night, all those years slammed back into me. My mother, Marlene, pushed in first wearing that cloud of perfume that always arrived before she did. Dad trailed behind her with a stiff posture, like he was hiding motives he didn't want exposed. They dropped the plastic cake on my counter like it was generosity. Their eyes scanned the apartment, measuring what they believed they were entitled to. So Mom said as she sat at my kitchen table, "Your salary jumped pretty high, didn't it?" She didn't bother pretending she cared about me. I kept my voice steady, though my pulse was pounding in my ears. Dad let out a low whistle and said, "You're doing great, just better than us." That unfinished sentence hung in the air like a trap I'd fallen into many times. I had heard it after every dinner, every ride, and every small thing they tallied as debt. Mom leaned forward with her hands folded, already preparing her pitch. In that moment, I realized they didn't come to celebrate me. They came to claim me. They came to cash in on my success as if they owned it. Mom told me it was only fair that I start contributing to the household. She said it softly, like she was offering wisdom instead of a demand. They insisted I hand over 50% of my income just until they recovered. They said it like generosity instead of manipulation. A sharp pressure gripped my chest as my shoulders pulled back on instinct. Old reflex, old armor. Suddenly everything felt painfully clear. This wasn't a request from parents. It was a debt call dressed as family obligation. For a few beats, I sat frozen staring at them across the kitchen table I bought alone with overtime money. It was the same table they never helped me choose, carry, or assemble. Yet they used it like it already belonged to them. Mom tapped her nails impatiently on the wood. Dad leaned back with the confidence of someone who believed the outcome was guaranteed. They were sure I would submit like I always used to. "That's not how this works," I finally said, my voice steady and low. Mom's smile tightened with that familiar scolding edge. "Sweetheart, don't be dramatic. Families support each other. Support is supposed to go both ways," I replied without flinching. Dad scoffed, delivering his favorite line. "We raised you, fed you, gave you a roof. You wouldn't have anything if it wasn't for us." There it was again, the script they never rewrote. Every guilt trip neatly folded into one sentence. And suddenly, I understood they weren't talking about support at all. They were talking about ownership. They believed they owned my success. And they were wrong. Back then, I never had the backbone to stand up to them. But tonight, something inside me finally cracked open. Mom's voice cut sharp as glass as she reminded me I left at 18 without questions, insisting I now acted like they owed me explanations. My jaw tightened because the truth rose faster than I could swallow it. I left because every breath I tried to take became another debt they tried to collect. Her expression flickered annoyance first, then anger as she threw out her favorite word, ungrateful. Dad leaned forward with cold certainty and repeated that this wasn't optional. He said I made good money, that half of it belonged to them because of all they had supposedly sacrificed. I answered quietly that survival wasn't sacrifice, and pretending it was didn't make it true. His voice turned sharp as steel when he said I owed them because they were my parents. Something inside me snapped cleanly, not loud but deeply, the kind of break you don't come back from. I stood slowly, the chair scraping softly across the floor like a quiet boundary drawing its own line. Their eyes tracked me as I walked to the counter, shoulders stiff but voice steady. I told them plainly they hadn't come to celebrate anything I could see, they only came to take. Confusion tugged at their expressions as unease crept into the space between us. I opened a drawer and took out the envelope I had prepared weeks before, without knowing why I'd felt the need. Holding it between my fingers, I told them it contained exactly what they were hunting for. They didn't realize it yet, but that moment was the true start of everything. Mom's gaze latched onto the envelope like something glittering she could claim. Dad straightened as if ready to accept a trophy, completely certain they had cornered me. They had no idea the ground under them was already shifting out of their reach. I placed the envelope on the table, and Mom reached instantly before I set my hand over hers, firm and unmoving. Her eyes widened as I told her she didn't get to walk into my home and demand half my life. Not anymore. Mom jerked her hand away, annoyed, calling it just money, while Dad muttered that I was being dramatic again. I ignored him as my pulse hammered, but my voice remained steady in a way that even startled me. Mom tugged the envelope closer as if proving something, and I told her calmly it wasn't toughness, it was clarity. Their brows tightened, confused yet still smug in that way only people with nothing to lose manage to be. Dad said they were my parents, insisting my attitude was what separated me from the rest of them. I answered that boundaries weren't disrespect, just reality. Dad scoffed and Mom accused my career of corrupting me, saying I'd forgotten who raised me. I didn't bother arguing, because debating with them was a treadmill, endless motion with zero progress. Instead, I stepped aside and called Dana, who answered quickly and asked if everything was okay. I watched my parents hover over the envelope as I told Dana it was time. Her voice sharpened with certainty as she warned me to stick to the plan and let them reveal themselves. I hung up, leaned against the counter, folded my arms, and felt the entire energy in the room shift hard enough for even my mother to sense it. Her eyes narrowed, sharp and suspicious. "What plan?" she demanded. "You'll see," I murmured, the envelope resting between us like a quiet storm they still couldn't see forming. Mom finally tore it open, crisp paper sliding out, official, notarized, undeniable. Not money, not apology, not surrender, just truth, the kind they'd signed themselves into long before today. As their eyes moved down the page, their smirks collapsed and the confidence drained from their hands. For a heartbeat, the house went still except for the hum of the refrigerator. Mom reread the page again and again, color fading each time, while Dad blinked hard like the words were slipping out of focus. The hands that had so confidently grabbed that envelope now trembled above the table. This isn't real," Mom whispered, desperate. "Oh, it's real," I said quietly, "your signatures are right there at the bottom." Dad squinted, indignant and shaking. "We didn't sign this, never." "You did," I replied, 3 years ago. "When you claimed you wanted to protect my future and insisted we draft this so I wouldn't be stuck with your financial mistakes." Mom searched her memory like she was clawing at a locked door. "We didn't know what we were signing. You understood it well enough to push it on me," I said. "And well enough to brag that I was finally standing on my own. Until now, when you wanted money, the silence that followed was crooked and heavy, like furniture missing a leg." Dad slammed the papers down, fury covering panic. "This means nothing." "It means everything," I said, steady as steel. "Legally, financially, morally, you have no claim to my income. And you never have." Mom clutched the pages like squeezing them could rewrite the ink. "We didn't raise you to be this cruel," she said, voice trembling into her usual performance. "Cruel," I echoed. "You demanded half my salary the night I achieved something you never backed, and walked in here treating me like a paycheck." Dad shoved his chair back, pointing a trembling finger. "Don't talk to your mother like that." I stepped forward, the ground shifting beneath us. "Then stop treating me like a wallet." For the first time, he couldn't speak, only breath came out. Mom slammed the papers back onto the table. "We'll take this to court," she snapped. "If you think a few documents can stop us, you already did," I said. Their heads jerked up sharply. "A parental support petition, you filed it." "I got the notice 2 days ago." Mom went pale, Dad froze mid-motion, both of them realizing I'd seen more than they planned. They never expected me to say it out loud. "And before you ask," I added, "yes, I saw the fake messages you submitted. The ones supposedly from me promising monthly payments. The number was 1 digit off mine." I let the word land like a hammer. Sloppy. Mom's breath fractured. Dad stumbled back a step. "You committed fraud," I said. And the truth hit the room harder than anything they ever threw at me. You didn't just cross a line, I said softly. You turned entitlement into a crime. Mom fumbled through her purse with shaking hands, voice cracking. We can explain, you'll have the chance, I replied, in front of a judge. Dad's voice rose, thin and breaking. You wouldn't do that to your own parents. You already did it to your own daughter, I said, quiet but sharp. All I'm doing now is protecting myself. Then the door buzzer rang, 3 quick chimes slicing through the tension. Dad jumped, Mom gasped, but I stayed still. Footsteps approached the hallway like a verdict walking closer. 2 women entered when I opened the door, Dana in her sharp camel coat, and an officer holding a folder. Mom backed into the wall like the room was shrinking around her. Evening, Dana said, calm as a surgeon. We have documents for the Hales. The officer stepped forward. Marlene and Richard Hale, she began, while Mom shook her head violently. This is unnecessary, we can talk, Mom pleaded. Jessica, the officer said firmly, tell them it doesn't matter. They're being served for submitting fraudulent evidence and attempting to obtain financial support under false pretenses. Dad's knees buckled like someone had cut the strings holding him up. You can't do this, we're family. Dana didn't even blink. Family isn't a shield when you break the law. Mom's voice rose into a frantic pitch. She trapped us, she planned this, that envelope, she set us up. That envelope, Dana corrected, contains a notarized declaration you both signed freely. You don't get to blame her for your choices. Dad lurched forward, voice cracking. We needed that money, and she needed her parents. All she ever got, Dana shot back, were debt collectors chasing your mistakes. The words split the room open. Mom pressed her hands to her face in dramatic sobs, while Dad grabbed a chair before his legs gave out. The officer handed them the documents. Your court date will be issued within the week. When the door closed, the apartment felt like someone had finally opened a window after years of stale air. But freedom wasn't finished yet. The real reckoning waited in court. The courtroom was cold and bright the morning of the hearing. My parents sat hunched at their table, drained and colorless. Dana stood beside me with a calm certainty that steadied my hands. When the judge read the accusations aloud, Mom burst into tears instantly. Your Honor, we only wanted our daughter to help. We're suffering. She abandoned us. Dana stepped forward with a stack of papers. Your Honor, if I may, she laid out evidence like precise cuts. The petitioner's own property and receive steady retirement income. Their claim of hardship is fabricated. And these messages, she held up the papers, are fake. The number isn't hers. We have carrier records proving it. The judge's expression darkened as he read. Mom sobbed louder. Dad muttered, this is ridiculous, under his breath. Then the courtroom door opened. My grandmother, Beatrice, walked in slowly with her cane, and the entire room fell silent. She took the stand with a voice sharp enough to slice the air. Jessica asked nothing from them, she said. She left at 18 and built everything herself. They never supported her. They drained her. She owes them nothing. Mom's sobs turned into a shocked gasp. Mom, how could you? Grandma didn't look at her. Because truth matters more than blood. The judge leaned back with a long exhale. Given the fraudulent evidence, the lack of demonstrated hardship, and the testimony provided, this petition is dismissed. Additionally, fines will be issued for the falsified materials. Mom collapsed into her chair. Dad stared forward, hollow and stunned. Dana touched my arm, not celebrating, but acknowledging the weight of what finally ended. A quiet victory settled over me like sunlight. Outside the courthouse, the warmth touched my skin in a way I hadn't felt in years. Behind me, my parents stood on the step, small, stunned, and silent, exactly as that envelope had promised. The days after the hearing felt oddly muted, as if someone had turned the volume down on my entire existence. No buzzing notifications, no guilt-laced messages, no frantic knocking, just stillness. The kind of silence I never realized I'd starving for. I moved into a small apartment near downtown Pittsburgh, high enough that the city became a soft hum beneath me. I furnished it slowly, a blue velvet thrifted chair, a warm amber lamp, a stubborn little cactus that refused to die. For the first time, every corner felt like it belonged to me, and only me. 3 days after settling in, a birthday card arrived, thin, beige, with handwriting I'd recognize anywhere. Beatrice. Inside, just one line, you chose truth over fear. I'm proud of you. I pressed it to my chest, letting the quiet love settle where chaos used to live. But peace never stays untouched for long. A week later, another envelope appeared under my door, my name scratched in my mother's uneven handwriting. I opened it slowly, bracing for the familiar sting. It wasn't an apology, it never is with people who refuse to see their own wrongdoing. Instead, it was a list of medical complaints, emotional pleas, and a final request for money. No mention of court, no mention of lies, just the same old expectation wrapped in pity. I folded the letter once, twice, then dropped it into the trash without hesitation. My hands didn't tremble, not even a little. Something in me had finally closed the door. That same week, I received a call I wasn't ready for. Beatrice had passed peacefully in her sleep. The world dimmed for a moment, soft but not shattering. Later, her attorney told me she'd left me her small home near Greensburg. I didn't keep it. I sold it and donated the money to a local program helping women escape financial abuse. It felt like the kind of legacy she'd want: quiet, strong, purposeful. One evening, I stood at my window, watching the Pittsburgh lights spill across the river like scattered gold. For the first time, my mind wasn't rehearsing apologies or replaying old wounds. I felt still. I felt free. I walked down to the river, letting the cool air settle over me. The water moved slowly, steady, patient, as if it had all the time in the world. And maybe, finally, so did I. My life wasn't perfect, but it was mine: quiet, earned, and unburdened. I thought about that envelope, the one my parents opened with so much expectation. It hadn't held money, it held truth. The first boundary I ever set without apologizing for it. If you've ever chosen peace over guilt, if you've ever had to protect yourself from the people who were supposed to love you best, tell me your story in the comments. And if you want more stories about courage and reclaiming your life, make sure to subscribe.